Welcome to the Explainer. So today, we're unpacking a massive, literal collision course happening right now in the European financial sector. On one side, you've got this unprecedented, relentless wave of sophisticated, highly automated cyber threats. And on the other, the incredibly strict, looming regulatory deadlines of DORA, that's the Digital Operational Resilience Act, and the groundbreaking EU AI Act. The stakes here, they absolutely could not be higher. We're talking about the security of trillions of euros and really the legal survival of the institutions managing them. Let's dive in. Just take a look at this number, 238%. Since 2020, the European financial sector has had to absorb a staggering 238% growth in cyber attacks. To put that into perspective, that is roughly 3 times the attack volume of the next most targeted industry. It's not just a spike, it's an absolute barrage.
But if you've ever actually sat there and managed a security dashboard, you know exactly what the real pain is here. Despite massive, sweeping investments in security sensors and tools, your traditional enterprise security systems, your standard SIMs, they actually only detect about 21% of known MITRE ATT&T techniques. Think about that. 21%. Attackers are moving exponentially faster, but our traditional detection nets? They're basically full of massive gaping holes.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the alert overload crisis. Second, we'll meet the CyberAI platform. Third, we cover engineering trust and oversight. Fourth, beating the DORA clock. And finally, a new era of defense. Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, the alert overload crisis, a bottleneck of reasoning. To really understand the solution, we first have to wrap our heads around the day-to-day reality facing a modern financial security operations center, or SOC. European finance is managing over 100 trillion euros in assets and processing hundreds of thousands of transactions every single day. The sheer volume of data is just mind-numbing. But here's the thing. The actual crisis inside the SOC isn't a lack of data. Now, it's a massive reasoning bottleneck. Literally, 2/3 of security teams simply cannot keep pace with the insane volume of incoming alerts. And the really tragic reality? Most real actual breaches are preceded by alerts that the system did generate, but a human analyst just never had the time to investigate. The alerts simply got lost in the noise. And now, with DORA and NIS2 regulations demanding incredibly fast, accurate reporting, that reasoning bottleneck isn't just a security risk anymore. It's a massive company-ending compliance liability. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, well, hey, artificial intelligence is great at reading mountains of data, right? Let's just throw a big LLM at it. But listen, the absolutely crucial point to understand here is that a narrow AI win does not make a robust security platform. Sure, an LLM might autonomously exploit a single vulnerability or, analyze a specific piece of code. But if you just throw a basic monolithic AI at a bank's firewall, it is going to completely and utterly fail the regulatory test. A standalone AI simply cannot reliably maintain a multi-tenant state. It definitely cannot map its findings to these incredibly complex European regulatory regimes, and most importantly, there is no way it survives a DORA audit. A true SOC platform literally has to do all of those things, and it has to do them seamlessly. Which brings us to Section 2. Meet the CyberAI platform, the analytical brain. So let me introduce you to a really fascinating approach, the CyberAI platform. It's built on a very specific, very clever design principle. It is a hybrid multi-agent system. But what does that actually mean in plain English? Well, it means we are absolutely not throwing away the millions of dollars that banks have already poured into their existing security infrastructure. Instead, think of your traditional SIEMs and scanners as the sensory system of the bank, right? They're out there collecting the raw data, generating the alerts. CyberAI steps in to act as the analytical brain. It's essentially a team of highly specialized AI agents that sit right on top of all that ground truth data. They're reading the alerts, connecting the dots, and actually reasoning about what the heck is going on in real time. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the architecture of these agents. Notice that central router agent right there in the middle, busily dispatching tasks. But specifically, I want to draw your attention to the specialist agents. Check out the compliance verification agent, we'll call that the CVA, and the reporting agent. Guys, this is where the absolute magic happens for DORA and EU AI Act compliance. The CVA is working in the background, constantly checking every single security finding against the massive rulebooks of DORA, NIS2, and GDPR. It's literally mapping the raw technical security issues directly to your legal and regulatory obligations, all in real time.
Moving on to Section 3, Engineering Trust and Oversight, meeting the EU AI Act.
Look, having a smart AI is fantastic, but European law is crystal clear here. You absolutely cannot just let an AI run wild inside critical financial infrastructure.
The EU AI Act, specifically Article 14, strictly mandates human-in-the-loop oversight for automated systems. So how does CyberAI solve this? They use something called bounded autonomy, and they break it down into 3 distinct tiers. Step 1 is Tier 1, which is fully autonomous. But this is strictly for well-understood, very low-risk, easily reversible actions. Think of things like just blocking a known malicious IP address. Step 2 is Tier 2, the gated tier. When things get ambiguous, the AI literally hits pause, bundles all the forensic evidence together, and waits for a human analyst to actually review it. And finally, Step 3 is Tier 3, requiring explicit approval. For high-severity actions that you can't easily undo, like say shutting down a core banking server, humans sign off as a hard, non-negotiable requirement. The AI simply cannot make that call on its own.
And this really brilliantly illustrates the concept of the trust envelope. Whenever a new event enters the system, a specific security context is immediately generated. It tracks exactly who the client is, which systems are involved, and crucially, which regulations apply to that specific asset. And check out the append-only audit log. Every single input, every piece of knowledge the AI retrieved, every tool it used, and every single human approval, it is all recorded here, permanently. It can never be altered. So when a DORA auditor eventually walks into your institution, and hey, we all know exactly how stressful that day is, you simply hand them this log. This is the literal built-in mechanism that guarantees the strict, immutable audit trails demanded by European law.
All right, let's look at Section 4, Beating the DORA Clock, Retail Banking Use Case.
So, the big question, how does all of this actually hold up under fire? Let's walk through a super high-stakes, real-world application, like a massive retail banking incident. Under DORA, banks have this incredibly tight, stress-inducing 4-hour window to submit an initial notification of a major incident to their regulators. Let's break down the timeline here. At T0 seconds, lightweight kernel sensors detect a weird anomaly deep down in the operating system. Boom! By T+1 minute, the central router agent has already triaged that alert and aggressively flagged it as a critical incident. By T+5 minutes, the incident response agent is actively executing containment playbooks, under human supervision of course, just to stop the bleeding. And the best part? Well before that terrifying T+4-hour mark hits, the mandatory DORA notification is completely drafted, perfectly formatted, and sitting there ready for the regulator. The absolute secret to hitting that impossible deadline is parallel processing. See, while your stressed-out human analysts and the incident response agent are desperately trying to contain the actual technical threat, the compliance verification agent is working completely concurrently. It's steadily pulling the forensic evidence, mapping it to those strict DORA templates, and drafting the legal notifications in the background. There is zero contention. Your security team doesn't have to suddenly stop fighting a raging literal digital fire just to fill out compliance paperwork. It is an absolute game changer that keeps the bank perfectly aligned with DORA.
Which brings us to our final part. Section 5, a new era of defense, shared resilience.
Beyond just surviving stressful audits, this technology actually opens the door to something so much bigger for the entire European financial sector. I mean, let's face it, your smaller e-money providers and regional banks simply do not have the massive blank check security budgets of the massive global institutions. But with CyberAId, they don't really have to. The platform uses federated knowledge sharing. This means that banks can safely share exactly what their AI agents have learned. You know, the new detection rules, the behavioral baselines, those successful response playbooks, and they can do it without ever exposing a single byte of raw private customer data. It's incredibly fascinating. A small payment provider in one country can literally inherit the highly advanced detection capabilities of a massive multinational bank overnight. It completely replaces slow, manual threat sharing with this continuous, privacy-preserving, machine-speed exchange of knowledge.
So, we've seen how that massive reasoning bottleneck leaves modern institutions incredibly vulnerable. We've explored how a hybrid multi-agent system steps in to act as the analytical brain, and how those carefully engineered trust mechanisms actually ensure your compliance with both the EU AI Act and the ridiculously strict timelines of DORA. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Take a really honest look at your current setup. Look at those towering alert backlogs. If the regulators literally walk through your front doors tomorrow morning, can your security operations survive a DORA audit? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.